We've got Neil Duncan on there too. Neil, you might have seen this one, but I did a version of this at our own group as well. And it's got a couple of photos of other people on our trips. But we all know and love the prom, and I presume a lot of you have been there. This is a great photo that our new president of Keilor Plains, Nicole Beers, has taken. And it's a place that I first went to when I was 14 and fell in love with. Did the circuit walk with the scouts and rode my bicycle down there from Fish Creek after catching the train. It was an amazing trip, and I've been back many, many times. But first, to acknowledge the first peoples of the land down there and pay respects to their elders past and present. 3 different tribes of people claim some activity at the prom: the Boonwurrung, Boonwurrung and Gurnai peoples. And I think you can see mangroves there, but this is a photo from Port Macquarie, but the mangroves do have their most southernmost occurrence, I think, in Corner Inlet near the prom. Yeah, just getting a bit to the history of the prom. You'll probably know that the Tassie was connected, and the prom really is part of the land bridge that was across to Tasmania not that long ago, really. It's only in the last 12,000 years, and when Bass Strait was formed, it took about 6,000 years for the ice to melt, and Aboriginal people, of course, were spread all through that area for tens of thousands, up to 40, maybe up to 50,000 years before then. And you can see, you know, these are caves generally that have been found with evidence that they can carbon date. And Aboriginal people were seagoing people, and the islands off the prom have evidence of Aboriginal people with middens just over the last 2,000 years. These are the types of canoes that they found historically in waterways, but also along the coast. Yeah, getting on to a bit of the prom geology. I hope your screens are big enough to see all of that. But so most of the prom is weathered granite, and it's that beautiful granite, large crystals, because it's formed underground and cooled very slowly. It's formed these beautiful crystal granites, and it makes those lovely round rocks and beautiful beaches. But there's also areas of alluvial soils and areas of calcareous sands and sand dune systems, and there's the riverine systems. So there's opportunities for a lot of different flora, a lot of different ecosystems down there. Fire is a huge factor in the vegetation, and the increase in fire since white settlement has been really significant. This is just what burnt in 2009. So there's been many, many repeat fires, and it's changed the vegetation in a lot of the places on the prom. This one wasn't too bad, actually, because it was kind of let burn because the Black Saturday was happening and everything else going on, and it was kind of burnt fairly slowly. So there were areas it missed and areas that were not, it didn't like destroy the topsoil like a lot of the Black Saturday fire did. That's a 1951 aftermath of a big fire, the mountain ash forest there. And mountain ash takes hundreds of years to mature. It can't be burned too often, and not much of it has come back on the prom. That's after the 2009 fire. Just forests of Xanthorrhoea flowers coming up after that fire. Lots of orchids. It was a great time to visit. And then there were floods straight after the fire. So the next year, that's a friend of mine, Darren, took that, just some of the big erosion caused by massive floods. The park was closed, I think, for about 9 months. Roads were washed away. There we are. That's looking at some of the walks. I gave a version of this presentation to the Youth Hostels Association the other night, actually. young people into hiking. Most of them had been to the prom, but they were planning more trips, and it's just terrific to see young people who are interested in the flora as well. I tried to give a sales pitch for the Plant Society, so we'll see if any join, but they tell me they don't just power through, they stop and take photos of all the flowers, and they were keen to find out what some of them are. So there's great overnight walks, and our plant group, the Aquila Plains, is going there in October for three days. So, and going on day walks. That's also just a couple of our members who, looking back at the types of gear that you'd wear in the old days, I guess the bell-bottom jeans, but also the old packs with the canvas and the billies hanging off. I only got rid of mine cleaning out the garage last year. I think I had an old canvas pack that I got from a second-hand store when I was in the Scouts. But, you know, it's just been a lovely place over the years to be able to hike down there. And these are the same people who are members of our group today. And yeah, great for young people too, the prom. Proper gear. That's our new president, Nicole. I like to show off Nicole because she's 24 and the new Aquila Plains president. So we hope to get more young people involved. It can be pretty rough. So good footwear and ankle support, and, you know, all the safety stuff's really important at the prom too. Sunburn and snakes and lots of dangers. Stunning scenery. Most of the tracks that you can go on around Untitled River are really easy walking like this, and beautiful heathlands, beautiful flowers along the edge. You've got to be prepared for rain as well. It sticks out into Bass Strait and it gets a lot of weather. The best time I think to go is probably late spring, but there we are, just looking over Tidal River with our group. And we take it slowly. We stop and lie on the ground and take photos, or at least I do. You'll know Anne Langmaid, the wonderful Anne, APS membership secretary. She's got the first aid kit there. Miller's Landing, that's another great place. The Northern Prom is also really worthwhile visiting, and not so many people go up there, but it's worthwhile driving in. I think it's 5 Mile Road to Miller's Landing. And the accommodation's terrific. It's nice to get the bigger huts and go as a group and have a glass of wine and try and identify the photos at night. Aquila Plains goes on a trip every year in spring, and every second year we go on an alpine trip, stay in the ski lodges, and it's a great thing to do. My 2 daughters with some friends, so it's a wonderful place for kids as well. Tongue Point, all over the prom, there's just stunning scenery, stunning lookouts. And the different ecosystems, fern walks, the tree ferns there, Lily Pilly Gully. A lot of that actually was damaged by the floods, but it's still a nice place to go. Stunning beaches. Don't worry, I'll get onto plants soon. I just want to say it's a conservation jewel, though. It is protected, treaty protected by international treaty, a UNESCO Biosphere Reserve, and the corner inlet is Ramsar Protected Bird Reserve. Just like the Western Treatment Plant here, by international treaty, it's protected. More than 750 vascular plants, but 100 are threatened species in Victoria. So it's a very important conservation spot. And fauna and fish. So 296 species of fauna, that includes birds, but 40 threatened species. And half of all of Victoria's known freshwater fish. So you've got the tidal river and other smaller little creeks and rivers. Very important environment for native freshwater fish, because the whole catchment is, you know, fairly pristine, and there's not a lot of weeds, there's not a lot of invasive species in there. And just quickly flash through some of the fauna before I get to the flora. Lovely gang cockatoos, and you can get up quite close to these. You can often hear them just feeding and chattering away down there. I think these are two teenage lads starting to get pink. Sooty oyster catchers all around the coast, as well as pied oyster catchers. I like this photo because they were kind of doing some sort of mating dance, I think. Quite extraordinary. Honey eaters, these crescent honey eaters on the Xantheria. And there's a lot of Banksias, the coast Banksia and the Banksia marginata and a range of things. So they're flowering in autumn and winter, and quite a few still in spring. They're often really, really good honey in the cooler weather for the birds. Bottlenose dolphin. I took that actually in Western Port Bay. And the fur seal, that was at Cape Lip Trap. They're both down at the prom too. Apparently there is a good not a good boat trip now that leaves from Tidal River. That'll take you around some of the island groups off the prom. Something I've been suggesting that we do one time. So you can, I don't know if you normally get off on the islands, but I think at least you see all the different life around the islands.
I've been on that boat trip and it was really, or one of the boat trips, and it was really good. We saw whales, whales and seals. We did.
Wow! Did you get off and look at any flora on the islands, or was it?
No, it was a 2-hour boat trip that went down to the lighthouse. It sort of went in close to shore and down to the lighthouse, and then around a couple of the islands. So it was very good.
Fantastic.
Well worth it. Expensive, but well worth it.
Okay, check it out. New Holland mouse. I haven't seen one of those, but I'd like to. All sorts of things around at night. Blondus wombatus. I love the wombats down there, and they're fairly used to people. So they're often just by the tracks munching away. So getting on to the flora. A lot of the prom doesn't have big eucalypt forest. A lot of the soils are pretty poor granite soils, but brown stringy bark apparently handles fire really well. And you can see it coming back from epidormic shoots there. It's quite common all over the prom. In the rainforest gullies, you'll see lily pilly. And I remember camping just behind Refuge Cove. There's a grove of lily pillies, and you can camp underneath them. And then that's the absolute white beach out on the other side of a little dune. It's just a stunning place. But yeah, the fairly southern occurrence of rainforest trees get to the prom. That's another one that goes right up the east coast. That's a lovely garden plant. I've got a pinky version in my garden. Iliocarpus reticulatus. Be interested if people grow that one. I think it's a lovely plant. Little ballerina dresses as flowers. And I've included a couple of other members' pics here that they put in at the time to me. This is from another member, Banksia serrata, Acacia suaveolens, in amongst it all there, sweet-scented acacia. If you're growing that at home, I think that's terrific. If you plant multiples of it, plant 3 or 4 of them, helps it get dense up. I haven't grown any of the astrolomas or styphelias. They're lovely things to see in the heathland. This one surprised me looking it up at how big they get. Apparently, before the big 51 fires, there were specimens with trunks of 1.5 metre circumference. But they are a lovely small plant. I mean, they do like a similar soil to a grevillea. They don't like too much phosphate, but they're a lovely small little plant for the garden. Mine's in a pot. That's because my soil in Thornbury is a bit too rich for a lot of grevilleas or banksias, but it flowers really nicely in a pot. and I didn't know it could get like a small tree. Does anyone grow that one? I'd be interested. Getting on to daisy bushes, another large thing, Olearia argiphylla, and you'd know this from the Yarra Valley, I guess, in the sort of more sheltered places in the Prom. Really tall daisy. Lots of different daisies around there, as there are in all different environments. This one is rare. This subspecies of Olearia rugosa it's just on the track from Tidal River out to the first point there, really, but it's only occurs at the Prom, and I think it's more because of the wavy leaves and the glands on the leaves that make it different. Of course, the Banksia spinosa, that's one of my favourite plants for the garden, and I hope you've all got one. I've got a couple, and in the summer when it's, you know, lots of native bees, lots of little wasps, lots of butterflies and other things love it, and the small honey eaters or small things like brown thornbill seem to go in it a fair bit, probably for the insects, and because it's a bit prickly too, maybe the bigger birds don't scare them away so much, so it's good shelter. Banksia
elfin copper butterfly as well.
That's right. Well, not here, I don't, but out your way you would, yeah. I took this one in the Grampians, and then a ranger for the Prom contacted me and said they want to use it on some signage down at the Prom, because strangely it occurs across on the path to Sealer's Cove, and then it occurs on Mount William at the Grampians, but not really in between. I haven't grown it, but it's a nice looking thing when I've seen it flowering at in the Grampians. Banksia marginata, there's all sizes there on the coast. There's really stunted forms that would look fantastic in a little pot, and then there's trees that, you know, get to 10 metres in sheltered places. And I wonder how much that is the environment, or if it's different genes genetically. Another terrific plant for Thornbury as well. There's a form of acacia, it was retinodes. It's a very bright golden form of uncifolia down there. It's a lovely little wattle, and that's more summer flowering. I took that on a summer trip, not a spring trip. I wouldn't mind growing it. I don't know if anyone does grow it. And the different forms of Acacia suaveolens, this looks very prickly, doesn't it? It looks very dense. Often it's more scraggly than that, but it's pretty beautiful when it's flowering. Flowers early. And the various leucopogons, I love these because when you look close up, you know, you see the beard heath. There's Leucopogon australis, perfumed one, that one, and with many more flowers than the coastal beard heath. And that's the coastal beard heath. You recognise, you know, you'll see it 1 metre, 2 metres tall at Tidal River around the car park right on the edge of the Norman Bay there. There's quite a lot of it. Lovely little beards on the tubular flowers. And the common one around the place, you can see the concave leaves, little pointed leaves, and the lovely, really bearded, curly ends on the flowers, you can see. Melaleucas, this one's a lovely one. And this is a garden plant that likes some moisture. I presume people would grow this one. It doesn't like a dry spot. I had one die, but it has a lovely scent. And that's the Melaleuca ericofolia. There's the Lou Ern walk, I think, just around the from the huts. I took mum there when she was quite old and not able to walk very far, and she loved just walking around that boardwalk, you know, connects with Tidal River bit and all through this a little paperbark forest, and there's lots of birds in there, and it's very nice. Clematis Glycinoides. It's different from Clematis aristata. Aristata has little edges, serrations on the edge. This is smoother, and it has the veins coming from the base of the leaf rather than Clematis aristata. But it's a great one to grow in gardens. It would go well in the Yarra Valley, I'm sure. White elderberry. It looks bright green under the tea tree and stuff at the prom. Can you think, oh, is that a weed? But no, it's a native Sambucus gaudichordiana. Quite a lovely plant. I haven't grown it. I don't know if people grow it. Beautiful Leptospermum mercinoides, often white, but sometimes pinky and sometimes even more pink than this. And it really shades beautifully from the pink to white. Lovely garden plant. Grows in the heathy, sandy areas, but I think it would be all right to grow. Peas. Some of you are involved in the peas coming up, the pea seminar next year, where we'll learn all about identifying peas. And all about bracteoles and stipules and such. I still find them a bit of a puzzle. You gradually get to know them, but I always try and remember now when I get photographs of peas to try and get these features in. So if you're doing a photo for iNaturalist or something, then you've got to try and include the base of the leaves and the sides of the bracteoles there. Sometimes often don't have the seed pods or seeds, but here are some of the peas. So the bright orange Pultenia daphnoides down there is very orange. It's a lovely plant. I've got one on my nature strip. It's about 1.5 meters and it's covered in flowers. It's very nice. I find you have to pinch out the tips to try and keep them dense, you know, because they can get a bit leggy and maybe blow over or something. They're a lovely pea. Tenuifolia. Another shot from down there. I love coming home and finding the detail when you blow up the photo. And you can often see flower spiders and things on your photos when you come home. Aotis Ericordes, another one of the eggs and bacon. Dilwinia glaberrima, smooth parrot pea. And again, you'd be noticing like the tips of the leaves and the base of the leaves, and it's smooth. Platylobiums. There's the Platylobium formosum. There's the other one, Platylobium obtuse angulum, that is perhaps more common out this way anyway, with the leaves that have the obtuse angles in them. Sphaerobiums, leafless globe peas. They're a bit easier to pick out. There's a couple of those in Victoria. There's Sphaerobium minors as well. And, you know, they're just sort of stems for most of the year, and then they have the stunning flowers. It's on 5 Mile Road. 5 Mile Road's the one out to Miller's Landing. I said that's really good. There's quite often animals out there too. There's wallabies and wombats and stuff like that. Right on the coast, there's another lovely pea. And you'll see this down at the surf coast as well. Barwon Heads, I've seen it flowering really nicely on the dunes. It's a coastal rambler that doesn't look like much most of the year and then comes up with these beautiful heads of purple flowers. I haven't grown that one. I don't know if people do. Kunzia Ambigua. There's lovely garden forms of this. More prostrate forms are available at Karanga and such. It's really, really lovely honey scent. And I remember there was a shrub of this when I was at school and I really noticed it. So that was a long time ago when at Yarra Valley School, there was some keen APS people who went there from Maroondah Group are involved, and they helped plant out gardens and bought stuff at Flora, and this was one of the ones. And when it flowered, the honey scent would just flow through the classrooms. It was beautiful. And the love creeper through there, beautiful mix. And again, you can, on butterflies and beautiful pollinators on the Kunzia. 22 species of butterfly on the prom. I guess the best time would be sort of early summer. Coria reflects everywhere. Lovely forms of it at the prom. And just to point out, so the leaves reflects around the flower, and the calyx on reflexor is straight. The Dampiria stricta, lovely little blue plumbago flowered coloured garden plant, really nice. Herbertias, there's a few Herbertias down there. This used to be, I think, called Herbertia prostrata, but it always seemed to have an upright form, so I never knew why it was called prostrata. But you can see how hairy this form is close up. It certainly is bundled, though. That sort of bundling of the leaves at the end of the stems is quite distinctive for picking it. And our lovely Apacris impressa is very beautiful, bright orangey reddy form down there, as well as all the other forms too. But I like this. You can see where little holes in the side of the flowers, and that's probably where eastern spinebills or some honeyeaters been a bit naughty and gone in to get the nectar through the flower rather than pollinating it. Tetratheca ciliata, pink bells, taken to show, you know, the hairiness of the leaves, the ciliata part of the name, and the leaves in whorls of 3. Exocarpus certicola, you'd know the big cherry ballart. There's a little coastal one that's quite rare. It's very pretty, I think. The different colours of the fruits, but again, like the other one, I don't think you'd ever be able to buy it or grow it, although I have heard you can buy the cherry ballart in some places. I think Goldfields nursery might have had some. Elixir, the sea box, and it does make a nice hedge in a real coastal situation. I haven't grown it. I've got an elixir from Queensland that has an amazingly strong scent. And I don't know if anyone's grown this one, but you can tell me at the end. Great coastal plant. And right on the sand dunes along the coastal walks there near Tidal River, you can find this Tomasia. Easternmost distribution at the prom. Quite rare. The yellow Stackhausia, there's the other one, the creamy Stackhausia, but this is the yellow one. Fine down there too. Carpobrotus rossii, carcala. I think Aboriginal people ate the leaves or did something with them, the fruit as well. And the whitish centre, so the white coming out from the centre in the first part of the sepals or petals here, I think is distinctive compared to introduced ones. Senechios, the Senechio maritimus. Not many people grow Senechios, but I think some of them would make great garden plants. I saw, going back actually, I saw some beautiful ones of these on Phillip Island that were quite rounded and big full heads of flowers, and that's a great plant. This one's a weed, unfortunately. And it's another photo from iNaturalist that Russell took. Beautiful little plant, growing in pure sand, but unfortunately spreading all around the coast. And that's just to show another daisy, which is one without the sepals. You can just see it's got the central, all the tiny little flower heads. Each of these is an individual little flower, but it doesn't have the sepals around it. So there are some daisies like that. That's pretty much everywhere. People think it's a weed, but it's a native plant. There's another one down there, that another daisy that doesn't have the sepals. It's Podotheca, and Podotheca mainly grow in the Mallee, but there's some at the Prom on the isthmus. Another beautiful daisy. This is all in places like the Brisbane Ranges that our group goes off to a lot too. Forms great swathes of it. A beautiful plant. Don't know of it in cultivation. Maybe Neil Duncan, who's on the hookup, might know. Argentipallium. Illyria ciliata, lovely little Illyria. Don't think this one's cultivated much. I've tried growing this one, the Chrysocephalum baxteri. It kind of, for me anyway, it lasts for a year, flowers, and then dies. I don't know why. But it's beautiful because it's got the, you know, the fringes. And Jane found a white form of the fringe lily, Thysanotis, which was a bit unusual. And often when you're walking in the sandy areas, there's these little stems. You wouldn't notice them until they flower, and little broom spurges, Amperias. And they have a lovely iris down there. Diplorina. I haven't grown it. Be interested again if anyone's grown it, because it's a beautiful plant. Apparently, when I looked it up, National Botanic Gardens are growing it en masse in plantings. So I'd be interested to see those and see if any of you are growing it, because it's a stunning thing. I have grown this Pattersonia. Doesn't last long in my garden. I think it might need more dampy sands or something. But it's a beautiful plant. The blue stars, and you often find these where you find orchids. Aren't they stunning things? Little lily with 6 petals. I have grown it. I found that St Kilda Indigenous Nursery had some for sale. So I had some growing, but the snails ate them pretty quick. And of course, lovely orchids, a whole range of orchids down there. The pink fairies in the damper areas under tea tree. Look for these in sort of mossy areas. There's a white one. Calodenias everywhere, the little pink fingers. This is just a quick sample. The sun orchids are beautiful. Generally only out when it is sunny. And we have photographers trying to blow on them to heat up the flowers so they open, but I don't know how effective that is. I love these ones. So these are one of the more common ones you would know, but just the lovely little rabbit ear tips on them. And this is the one we found that was flowering in pouring rain, Miller's Landing. And we went away, we didn't know what it was. We went away and identified it, and it is down in Gippsland, but it has never been recorded on the Prom before. So we told the rangers, and we put it on our nature share that we had going at the time, which is now part of iNaturalist. So that was lovely to see. Spider orchids. This is the brown club spider orchids with the little brown tips and clubs on the end. Beautiful. And of course, you would generally know about the specialisation of orchids and how difficult it is to keep the very specialised ones alive. If their pollinator's in decline and they'll need the right pollinator, they need the right fungus in the soil, and they need the right climate and everything else. This is a beautiful one, I think. And then the onion orchids, little wavy margins on the labellum mean it's this common onion orchid, unifolia, but there are other similar ones. Red beaks, or the fire orchid, this sort of, or when this dies, it all turns black. And the Pyrorchis nigricans can come up. You occasionally get the flowers when you haven't had fire through, but you get masses of them when you have. And of course, in summer you'll see Hyacin Orchids. That one's at Tidal River. Diplorina, and they don't have their own leaves. They live off fungus and the roots of other plants they get their nutrients from. They have an underground tuber. Blechnums, Blechnum minors. It's a lovely Blechnum. Like that one, lots of different ferns down there. Oh, that's some sort of flood relief stuff, but the new growth of the hardwater fern is really nice. That's a good garden plant. I've got this one growing too at my place on the east side, and the king fern, one of the in a genus of its own, the Todea. We found one down at Arthur's Seat on the walk down there. It's a lovely, can live up to 200 years, but the trunk gets wider and wider and lumpier and bigger, but it doesn't get huge like the tree ferns. It doesn't get tall. And of course, if you're into other stuff, you can get into all the other lichens and mosses and fungi and rushes and sedges and stuff. Now, I mentioned iNaturalist, and I have been getting into this a fair bit. This was a snapshot of a screenshot I did when I was looking at the prom. And these are observations people have put onto iNaturalist. Are any of you on iNaturalist? Do any of you load up observations? Be interested to know. It's citizen science in action. There are now over 2 million observations Australia-wide, and it's all living things. Once you get a couple of people on there confirming the identity, that record is then uploaded to the Atlas of Living Australia and becomes part of the scientific record of living things in Australia. The green ones are the plants, and you can see photos people have taken on the walks. You follow the walks around there. And of course, it's for fish and butterflies and birds and all sorts of things. But it really is a fantastic resource, and it's knowledge that's very, very important for distribution of flora, for the timing of flowering with climate change and such. I mean, they've found a new moth in a Royal Park in the middle of Melbourne, yeah. So for discovering new species, for finding out where things are, and you can go on, you can easily create a login. And if your photo has GPS built in, it helps, but a phone photo is fine so long as it's got some ID features. You load up the photo, it automatically goes into the map, and then you can name it, someone can confirm that, or you can just leave it to more expert people to try identifying things. So it's a good thing to have a go at. Just a few thank yous for people with the photos. Jay, Neil, Indra, Ginny and Darren. Otherwise, they were mine. The field guide to Wilsons Prom is fantastic. Mega and Kahoot. Flora Online, you probably all know. That's another terrific thing. But you check out, the part of it has descriptions of different parts of Victoria and their ecosystems, so you can get the list of the plants likely to be found as the key plants in each ecosystem. iNaturalist I've mentioned, the Parks Victoria stuff for the prom, the VNPA, you know, do a wonderful job trying to advocate for our parks, for more rangers for our parks, which we're trying to do too as a APS Vic. But joining the National Parks Association will help them in their role, so I'd highly recommend that. And as well, protecting in parks and what can happen in parks, you know. The latest thing where they've declared parks in central Victoria is, they'll allow mining for the next 10 years and logging for the next 15 years. Or there's a lot creeping into the idea of a national park as some activities that should not be there. So I'd urge you to get involved in that. And that's all for the prom bit, folks. And I'm happy to sort of answer any questions about